So, hey, Sue, welcome. Thank you for joining me for a chat. So we're going to talk about all things apprenticeships and careers and upskilling, leveling up. So I'm looking forward to it. Hopefully you are too. We'll see how it goes.
John, don't you worry.
Fantastic. So do you want to start off by telling us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Sure. So I am a registered career development professional, and that is important to note because we have to do a postgraduate qualification and then we have to do another year in the field being assessed and for competency. So like a teacher, you're trained as a careers guidance professional. And careers now is kind of a catch-all for employability officers who are working for the job centre, and careers guidance and coaching is about working with the client to help them unpack what their goals are. It might be things around mindset, it might be things around imposter syndrome, but we are trained in counselling, person-centred counselling. Plus, we are also plugged into employers and we are aware of pathways and routes and also labour market information, which really does inform, it should inform your career planning. So it's a really brilliant job where you get to be nosy, fantastic, what's your job like, why do you do it, what's a typical day? But it's also really enjoyable because you're working very much with clients to move them forward. So careers guidance is about, that's the counselling piece. Careers coaching is then around, okay, what are the obstacles? What are the goals you're trying to reach? How will we move you on to get you there? So coaching is more about a sort of performance within the job or sort of planning ahead. But the careers guidance is more that decision making and being able to reflect on the opportunities, reflect on your strengths, but also most importantly, pick an action path or plan that's going to suit your strengths and skills. So self-development and self-reflectiveness is really important.
Nice. That's really interesting. I think coaching's so important, isn't it? And reflection, that's something we try and embed in the apprenticeship programs that I'm involved with, because I think there's a quote that I can't remember who said it, but one doesn't learn from experience, one learns from reflection on that experience, right? Reflection is so powerful because it helps embed learning and understanding what you need to do. So who do you normally work with mostly? Are you working with younger people, with their parents, or people in current jobs?
So,
or all of the above?
So I have worked for nearly sort of 30 years and I've dotted around various roles. I've worked very closely in the higher education sector with MBA students. And to bring it back to your point about reflection, John, they are, brilliant people managing millions of pounds worth of projects. They had to be kind of at least mid to senior management to be enrolled in the MBA. And I worked with them on that reflective piece. They could tell me what they did in their jobs. They could tell me the challenges there were, but they couldn't then reflect and understand what skills or strengths they'd been gaining. So I think it's a learnt skill, the ability to reflect. And I don't know that that's really understood within the education system. So there's a lot of peer feedback. So I've worked within higher education schools, within business schools, working with senior academics, working with MBA students, working with undergraduates, postgraduates, masters, PhDs. But I also work in the secondary school sector. And I was a careers leader and careers advisor for 6 years in a secondary school. And that, again, was looking at embedding those what's called Gatsby benchmarks, which are 8 benchmarks looking at understanding career planning, having a stable career programme, being able to reflect on careers within the curriculum, work experience, relationships and encounters with employers. Like there's a whole raft of things that careers programmes have to provide and build into the school curriculum now. So I was lucky enough to have a great supporting head teacher and governors, and wrote a programme that went into as an academic subject into the curriculum, which was called the Professional Placement Programme, which supported students to do that career development, but also access structured work experience opportunities in year 12, 13 because of the degree apprenticeship landscape. So key employers now. So if we think back to the old days of the milk round at university, where you had employers targeting universities and coming on campus to try and say, come and work for us when you graduate. It's the similar thing now in sixth forms and in schools. You've got employers saying, well, come and work for us when you've finished your sixth form and we'll put you through the degree whilst you're working. So that sort of sense of connecting with employers and being able to be the conduit, the bridge between education and employment is really critical now in the secondary school space. So I've done a bit of that too. And I work with parents who really just don't understand what the current lay of the land is and the opportunities that are available. So I'm working very closely with both secondary schools and university graduates as well.
Nice.
It's really good.
Yeah,
it's really unique. Love it.
Yeah. Helping people figure out where they're going to go in life. You can't get any better than that.
Well,
right?
It is, and the thing about it is the old adage with careers work is you don't know what you don't know. So very often, clients are coming saying, I don't know. And I'm like, brilliant. That's where we begin. And this is the point. Like I offer a career booster blueprint, but it's that sense of the how of career planning. It's overall going, careers and think about what job you want to do. But that's really overwhelming. And you have to chunk it down with this. Okay, what do you look like at your best? How are you with your friends? How are you in the classroom? How do you learn best? And people start to build up a picture of the skills that they've actually gained. So, quite often saying to a student, okay, school is your job. Every morning you get up suited and booted and in you go to school. But actually you're persuading others of your ideas. You're working in groups. You are managing your time. You're managing up quite often with tutors and teachers. You've got to make sure you get the information you need. You're having to follow up if you haven't got the slides. So it's beginning to break that experience into a language that employers might use. And I often find that's where the trickiness is in articulating those skills. So there's a lot more now happening in the secondary space with things like free programs like Skills Builder and the Careers and Enterprise Company, who are responsible now for careers and enterprise within the secondary space. They've got a brilliant resource directory with lots of free resources to support careers leaders and amazing apprenticeships, which they've got a brilliant podcast for parents called The Parent Perspective. And it's really, again, interviewing students, finding out the information, a typical day in the life of an apprentice, helping people to understand what it is that they don't know. So once you do that exploration, then there's some questions that you might want to ask. But quite often for parents and for pupils and for undergraduates, starting that exploration and asking those key questions. What have I gained from my experience? What skills have I got? There are things now called graduate attributes that are built into the programme. So there's a lot of checks and balances with the government agenda and also with quality assurance and, the teaching education framework. So increasingly now questions are being asked. So we are recording this just after a couple of major resignations yesterday, and I noted that Michelle Donlan is now head of the Department of Education. So she's been talking a lot about the value of a degree and the value of the return on investment. And this is an interesting debate because are you going to university to get a good job or are you going to university to learn? And the purpose of a university now with COVID, do you really need to attend in person? You could do a degree now from Harvard Business School all online. So that debate about students as consumers is suddenly playing out in real terms because people aren't accessing in-house lectures and they're wondering what they're paying the 9,000 for, 9,250 student fees, what I'm actually paying for. But equally, the government, the university is saying, well, that 9,250 doesn't actually even cover what it costs us to educate you. So there's a lot of really sort of interesting things happening in the education space. But if you take it back to the student, they need to know why they're going. And in my experience, many sixth form students are going to university simply to kick the can down the road so they don't have to make these big decisions about what they're going to do with the future, which is fine. Why should they? And there isn't a one path you follow. But I do suspect that if students were thinking more critically about their skills and their skills gaps, a gap year is really important. It's a year where you can go and work and just experience working, whether it's Waitrose or wherever. And then you've still got your university place to fall back on. So nobody's saying don't go to university, but I think the issue is don't go to university and wait it out or spend 50 grand to figure out how much you can drink. Like, take a gap year and travel.
That's an expensive
experiment. Going to university now, you need to be really quite clued up what you're doing with your degree and what you're getting out of it, because you are going to have to start paying back that student loan eventually. So,
I can certainly relate to the kicking the can down the road concept. I think when I went to university, it was because it was an option, and because it was an option, and I knew I kind of vaguely wanted to go into computing. And there was an opportunity, and I didn't really know what I wanted to do other than not really get a full-time job at the time. I won't go into my peculiar employment history, but that was the one thing I knew I didn't really want, was a kind of a standard traditional 9 to 5 full-time job. So at least I had that, but I ended up, nice. You got to keep hydration up. You've got to keep hydrated. The other thing about that, I think there is a real shake-up going on in the higher education and education space, partly because of COVID, partly because of the shift towards the learner as a kind of consumer or customer. The degree apprenticeship space is a real, I find myself sitting in a very strange and interesting but positive space, in that it feels like a bit of a small space, because in many universities it is smaller space than the normal undergrad program.
And I think,
but like we were saying previously offline, it's degree apprenticeships are often, when they're done properly, they are such a fantastic experience. You get the degree education alongside your work experience.
But I think what's important about the degree apprenticeships, the reason they are garnering more traction and more energy and more buy-in is because employers are finally saying this is the solution we need. Because employers are quite clear that the graduates they're getting haven't got the skills and attributes they really want. And if they want, if they've realised if they want to grow their perfect employee, then they have to train them. I mean, James Dyson is the best example, where he was challenged. He wasn't happy with the engineers that were coming out, and they said, well, if you're not happy, build your own university. So he has.
Yeah, he did that, didn't he?
James Dyson Institute. So it's a campus university where you're doing the degree, and he's got all these labs and things. Very, very competitive to get on. And I think, it's one of the things that there's definitely a parity of esteem. So when my school, we had the academic route and the professional route. And by the time I had finished there, nobody had really understood about degree apprenticeships. So I ran a lot of degree apprenticeship evenings for parents. I got students back, alumni that had worked for Cisco, for Santander, really amazing companies, Leonardo. So the students would come back and talk to the sixth form and their parents about the reality of it. And, I think it's important to note that by the end of that time, students were coming to me and saying, well, can I do a degree apprenticeship? And they were actually factoring that into the decision making. So it's not either or, but students were looking at universities, but also then creating accounts and getting alerts for the degree apprenticeships that were of interest to them. And it's complicated for people to understand. So my best advice, if you're really not sure what you want to do, then, a lot of people used to trundle off and just do a general business degree. Well, I'll just go and do business, or I'll go and do, humanities, which is great. And that's great, you know, but you come out, you've got your student loan, and now, you know, excuse me, you need to think about getting a graduate level job. But increasingly, the great opportunities are with these large companies are through the degree apprenticeship route. So if you've done a degree in English and then you see a really great job for human resources with BP, you can't apply because your first degree isn't related. So degree apprenticeships are for any age, you know, up to the age of 24. And you can do a first degree and then a degree apprenticeship. But the big message now is don't sit it out doing business, because actually you won't then be eligible for these degree apprenticeship programs with some of the really great organisations. You will have to get on a graduate training scheme. And this is where my insight comes in, because I know how competitive it is when you're competing with your Oxbridge and your sort of Russell Group universities to get into these graduate programs. Whereas when you leave school, you've got a much better chance with slightly lower A-levels, lower A-level grades to get into Goldman Sachs or to get into, Google. You know, I've seen some amazing opportunities, the BBC. You know, I've seen jobs working for the Houses of Commons, doing a business apprenticeship or doing something around marketing, digital marketing, and you're there in Westminster. So if you don't know what you want to do, then that's okay. You say, well, maybe I'm never going to know what I want to do. Put a pin in it. What's important now is that I get as much experience and skill development as I can. So, you know, I'm going to sign up for the Find Apprenticeship Service and get alerts sent to me. I'm going to look at not going to uni. I'm going to look at Rate My Apprenticeship or All About School Leavers. I'm going to create accounts for all of them. Screenskills.com, again, if you're going into the media industry, you do not want to do a degree in it, because the entry-level roles you'll be overqualified for, but you haven't yet got the experience.
You've kind of locked yourself in once you make that decision. Haven't you?
So Screen Skills is a great one to keep an eye on, film and television apprenticeships. But the point is, you would apply to uni, but that should be your plan B. So your plan A is to get an apprenticeship and think, well, I don't know what I want to do, but that's okay. I'll do business or marketing or project management, or, you know, I'll do something, maybe digital marketing or content, you know, get into it and get the qualification for the first 2, 3 years, 4 years. And then at the end of that, you've got a degree for free. You've got a host of skills. If you then want to go and do a master's qualification to specialise, it's a 1-year course that you've probably saved up enough money to fund yourself. And then you're older and more clear about what you look like at your best. So if you want to then go and do a master's in film studies, or you want to go and do a master's in climate change, or, you know, a master's in, I don't know, something quite specialised to get into a sector, you've got your first degree, 4 years experience with a great organisation like PwC. So when you then compete for jobs after your master's, you're going to beat the other competition because you've got more work experience.
Already
but
leveled up.
It feels a lot to take
really
on
powerful.
if you don't know. You know, you sort of think, well, I don't know what I want to do. How can I commit to this? But if you look at the degree apprenticeship as an opportunity to take quite a structured, instead of gap year, call it a 4-year gap year. Just go and do a degree and work. And then sit back and go, well, where am I at with this? Have I enjoyed it? Do I want more people contact? Do I want more data contact? What am I enjoying about my job? Which areas do I want to develop more specialisms in? And this is what they keep saying about careers of the future, is that specialisms are going to become important. So if you think about the letter T, there's the broad knowledge and then there's the specialisms. And, you know, I'm already seeing it with hybrid working, but, you know, you'll come together on group projects, bring your specialism and then disband. You'll come together on another group project, bring your specialism and then disband. So it's not like staying with an employer and working with them for life. So that sort of linear, I'm going to go here, great. It feels possible for things like accountancy and medicine, but for most students, they're not really sure what they want to do, but they've got a vague inkling. It might be working with people. Well, go and do a chartered manager degree apprenticeship for 4 years. and then reflect. Do you want to go back and do a master's? Or do you want to move to another company? You know, it takes time to figure out where you're going, and you will use the time well, because you're not going to be in debt, and you've got a more competitive edge to you. But for a lot of school leavers, that still feels too much. And I do understand. So I wish there was more of this, John. The only one I've seen that I can completely I'm blown away by is IBM do a 12-month, it's called the Futures, IBM Futures scheme. And it's a 12-month gap year for sixth formers before they go to university. And that's smart.
Nice. Interesting.
So if other big,
is it training?
Yeah. It's a year, it's a gap year. You work on projects, you get a proper salary. And at the end of that, everybody, so they've got places at university to do computing, or, there's things within business. And every student goes, no, you're all right. I'm staying and doing my degree this week. And it's kind of like a feeder into their degree apprenticeship programs.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I see some of the employers I work with that are doing degree apprenticeships, and some of the other providers I'm involved with, maybe they're kind of helping employers develop, like they start with a level 4 program, a level 4 apprenticeship, for example, which might be an 18-month program and has value, and that's ideal for school leavers. And then we often, the university that I work with, and we run our digital degree programs, we can then offer a feeder into essentially upskilling. They're already in a job, they've got their level 4, and then they can kind of shortcut that first year of university and upskill to a level 6 degree, which is a fantastic progression opportunity. And of course, there are level 7 apprenticeships, there are master's level apprenticeships, which are fully funded as well, which is something we're looking at, and a lot of other providers.
And to be clear as well, so with PwC and these bigger accounting firms, they're saying they're offering level 6 qualifications, but what they're offering is level 6, which is degree level in the professional body. So this is the thing that people don't realise.
Sure.
When you go and do a degree in accounting, what you're actually studying is the knowledge required to get to certain associate level. So when you finish your degree, you're like an associate level. And what PwC, they'll take you and put you through all the exams that gets you to level 6. So you don't hold a degree from university, but you hold chartered status. And then there's the level 7, which is the chartered status. So
okay, that's interesting.
So
something
where
slightly
there's
different.
professional bodies like engineering or computing or accounting or actuarial studies, or maybe even the Chartered Institute of Professional Development, you're working to a level that is degree level, but you don't necessarily get a degree.
But it may not include the bachelor's. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, it's interesting. Again, this is the kind of knowledge that, even I wasn't aware of that, because my narrow field is digital. So this is the kind of thing, this is why you're so valuable, to help people understand, help parents understand, help learners understand.
But the thing is, it's not less than
you mentioned, oh, sorry, go on.
It's not less than the degree. So if you're thinking, well, Deloitte are offering me a level 6 apprenticeship in transactions and markets, then you're working in transaction markets and you're doing the paperwork. So, for example, you need 104 UCAS points. So that's what, a B and 2 Cs? I'm not very good at maths. A B's 40 and a C's 32.
No.
So I think it's a B and 2 Cs. So you get a B and 2 Cs at A level, and then you join these management consulting firms, and you're coming out in 4 years later with clients, project management, relevant experience, and the chartered status. You'll be a chartered accountant or a chartered HR or a chartered, and that is the equivalent of having the degree. And then, you can move companies. So, it's not less than having a degree, because if you're going to do a degree in accounting, then that, you can still do the chartered status accounting. It's the same thing. Yeah. So if parents are concerned,
it's even more, it's more aligned to industry, right? Because it's directly aligned to industry, and that's the whole point of apprenticeships, isn't it? So I had a question for the benefit of parents and students. I know it can be a bit of a difficult space to navigate into finding these opportunities, but where would you encourage parents or students to look for apprenticeship opportunities?
So the first website I would draw your attention to is Amazing Apprenticeships. And at first it's quite overfacing, but if you use the tabs along the top, there's ones for like parents, students, employers. And then there's also a tab that has time to apply. And it gives you an overview of when recruiters are looking. And there's also, they have a newsletter. So they will send you the PDF when they have their higher and degree apprenticeship vacancy listings. But generally speaking, it's very similar to universities. So this is what always surprises students and parents. If you start school in September, by December, they've recruited. So it's always in the first term. So year 13, the school are saying, get your UCAS form in. The closing deadline for that is the 26th of January, 15th of October if it's Oxbridge Medicine. But you're generally at the tail end of year 12, you're focusing on your personal statement. Some schools might start it then, but certainly in that first term, between that and Christmas, they're focusing on personal statements. But that's also when you need to be registering for vacancy alerts. So you can create an account on, it's called findapprenticeshipservice.gov.uk, ratemyapprenticeship.co.uk, notgoingtouni.co.uk, and allaboutschoollevers, all one word, .com. Those are just a few.
Nice.
And
nice. We'll make sure to put those out on an article or post on the Trestle website.
So the thing about it is that it used to be really well streamlined, where the first port of call you would advertise your vacancy on the government website, but nowadays it's not. It's not compulsory, so you really want to be registered with a lot of them. Also, UCAS.
Yeah, I've seen that myself. Yeah, where there's been jobs I know employers I've been working with have been hiring, but they haven't listed on the Gov website.
UCAS.
And so it's very difficult when you're recommending people to have a look. Yeah, there's no single point of call anymore.
UCAS also is a great place. They highlight degree apprenticeship vacancies as well.
Yeah, fantastic. I think I had an experience recently how UCAS they managed the application process for a certain degree apprenticeship program, but I can't remember the details.
Well, you've raised a good point, John, actually. What happens with the degree apprenticeship process is that you apply to the employer. You don't apply to the university. But it's also another measure that maybe possibly in 2-3 years, UCAS could be doing essential applications for all employers, because actually it's becoming an option.
Yeah, that's what I heard about. It was a pilot with exactly that, and there was some teething problems in that all the information went to UCAS, and then the employers, because of GDPR, couldn't get the information out properly, so they had to get the learners to submit again. So it was a bit of an awkward process, but they're definitely piloting it, which is interesting.
Well, it's a value add for employers.
That would certainly bring degree apprenticeships to the fore, wouldn't it?
And that's always been the case. And even as a graduate, your large, banking, finance firms, multinationals, utilities, oil, gas, engineering companies, they're so big they can afford to have an in-house HR team with their own database for recruiting. But a lot of small to medium employers who are still got like 500 employees or less, they're still big companies, don't have the same muscle or finances to do that. So UCAS would be offering a good service to them. And, that brings me to another point that maybe students haven't considered. A lot of people are put off doing a degree apprenticeship because they want the university experience. Well, Santander, certainly a couple of years ago, they were recruiting for up to 30 apprentices. I think in the end they took on 19. But I know firsthand from this pupil from my school who came back to talk to pupils, she said it's brilliant. First year we went on holiday to Ayia Napa. Next year we went on holiday to Florida. We all plugged in. At first we used to get our pizza and plug into our online courses at night and sort of study together, and then we realised there was a bit more of a distraction. But there was a whole camaraderie. And, the Government Economic Service, so the biggest recruiter of economists is the Government Economic Service and the Bank of England. They're recruiting for degree apprentices being put through a University of Kent Bachelor of Science in Economics, up to 75 vacancies. So, again, you've got a whole team Small employers might only take 1 or 2, and you've got to factor that into your decision making. With a small employer, quite often you could be managing the process more yourself and pushing for what it is that you need. But if it's an advertising agency or a small film making company, that's great because you can get stuck in and you get early responsibility. So you've got to look at the companies that are hiring, and confidence is so important. Employers know that you're not the finished product, and it's the same as a graduate. A graduate vacancy might have a wish list of 10 things, but if you meet 7 of them, of course apply. It's up to the employer to say, well, actually, no, you're not. We've met you, we've interviewed you. You don't discount yourself at the outset. As a school leaver, employers are looking at your potential, your willingness to learn, your ability to think outside the box or show a bit of innovation. And even if you've got involved at school or you've done a paper run, that commercial awareness, showing that you understand the importance of your actions to the consumer experience or the business or the brand or the image, they're just looking for a bit of savvy around that. So, you can be listening to fantastic podcasts, like the Financial Times do a podcast every morning. You can be listening to The Economist, keeping up to date with what's going on. Those are just really important things for sixth formers anyway. And certainly from my school, there was a lot of students were showing a lot of entrepreneurial skill, buying trainers. I'm just going to the toilet, miss, and they're on checking their eBay to see if they make the money.
It used to be chocolate bars on the playground, didn't it? And that was eBay.
And this is the thing, it's, students are very resourceful, and they've had to be resourceful through the pandemic. And, I think degree apprenticeships, they should absolutely categorically be one of your top choices. So yes, you're looking at universities, but looking at degree apprenticeships, higher apprenticeships. And again, I don't think parents understand this, that what we would normally see, like school leaver roles, are now what we call higher apprenticeships. But if you can get into Google doing a higher apprenticeship in data or data analytics or, machine learning, you would grab that with both hands, because you could go and do a degree in computing and still not even be interviewed by Google. And this is the point, like, apprenticeships, higher and degree apprenticeships, are access entry-level routes from school into fantastic organisations that will take you, grow your skills, develop your career potential, and you get a qualification to boot. And that's the way you have to think about it. They're not a soft option. So stories of students, success stories. The hardest thing is getting appointed. And students think it's dead easy. I have one chap I've been working with who is in sixth form but was struggling with maths, wanted to work in finance. But it became clear from his mocks that he was lucky if he was going to get a C. So all that dream of like London School of Economics, where it's A star, A star, A to get into a degree, or, the university would have wanted to go to that he felt held the prestige he was after, he wasn't going to do. He wasn't going to get in. And so it was like a kind of wake-up call. So he came to me and said, well, look, how do I get into some of these big companies, these big finance companies that that's my dream of working for in the city? And after, I think he applied to about 40 opportunities and he got offered something with Deloitte eventually. But that was the 5-stage application process, which is another whole podcast another time. But it's, it's an application, it's a telephone interview, then you're invited to a group assessment centre, and then there might be another interview with senior partners. So it's not easy. It needs a lot of commitment. Supporting students to learn that skill or to practice in schools. It's really a shame. So, I think for parents, please look at the Careers and Enterprise Company for good resources. Look at Amazing Apprenticeships. Those are 2 great websites, and you'll find a lot of information on UCAS as well. They've got a whole section on apprenticeships.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, well, there's a wealth of information out there. It's just knowing where to find it, isn't it? So really value all your insights, Susan. It was really, really appreciative having you to have a chat.
It's great. Happy to help.
I think we'll make sure that this gets promoted far and wide. I hope those that listened and or watched this video enjoyed it, and I'm sure we'll be sharing more information on the Trestle website to kind of help parents, help learners, and hopefully providers as well. Any final words from you, Sue? Encouragement to potential apprentices?
Well, I think the thing is that don't let your lack of confidence or your lack of knowledge hold you back. I think who dares wins. You don't know what you want to do. You might never know what you want to do. It's not about pinning something on a job title. It's about growing in your strengths and growing in your experiences. So think of your career like an Easter egg hunt. You've got your basket, and every egg you find is a skill, okay, or an experience. You're going along this windy path, you're picking up all the eggs you find, and when you get to a point that you've got to make a decision or you have to move on, so at the end of sixth form or at the end of your degree apprenticeship or at the end of your degree, you look in your basket and you look at this thing that looks of interest to you, and they're looking for project management. Oh yes, so I picked up a bit of that. There we go. Being able to deliver presentations. Oh yeah, I've got that too. So it's not, you don't know what it is you don't know, but what you want to do is start the journey and start picking up all those eggs, because the more eggs in your basket, the better. You'll not go hungry.
Fantastic. That's it. Yeah, wonderful. No, I love that. I'll be sure to remember that analogy. That's a good one.